Thank you for joining us for this episode of Policy Connections. This week we have my Senator, Cliff Bear, joining us, who's serving his first term in the State Senate following 5 terms in the State House of Representatives. Senator, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here.
Senator, how was it different serving in the Senate from your 5 terms in the House? What were some of the major accomplishments that you had this year?
Well, the difference is really more just in the logistics of the numbers in the legislative process, half the size of the body. But it is an entire legislature, and I was fortunate in my time in the House to serve on several joint committees, which are made up half of House members and half of senators. So a lot of my good colleagues in the Senate I already had some time with on committees, so it was a very smooth transition, very welcoming and collegial, and I've really enjoyed it. The House lent me to having the opportunity to have a little more time on some hearings, like in Rev and Tax, where all the tax policies start, and that gave me a little bit of a leg up going over into the Senate, where often the situation is you're waiting for tax bills to come over to the Senate. So, but all in all, it's been a very good process and a good fit for me, and I've really enjoyed it.
Okay. So, Senator, we just wrapped up the 2013 legislative session. What would you say were some of the major highlights or accomplishments for this legislature?
Well, first of all would be the balanced budget, and the governor teed it off on a very positive note, basically saying he didn't want the budget and state government to grow at the same rate as recovery out of the recession and as the revenues start to increase and come into the state, which I really appreciate because that also lent us to a less presumptuous process for budgeting, where we could go through and assess the monies that are being spent and go through and justify them without being on autopilot going to, well, this is just how much money we have to spend. And that also lends to not only responsible budgeting, but monies that come in can then be used for things like addressing changes in tax policy, over-needed changes in tax policy that will help the economy and help those revenues. And I think that that was an important way to start the session, and we were successful in balancing that budget. And then we were able to take the first incremental step of addressing the personal property tax for business, which of course, the governor also said that's a good start and was appreciative, and I am too. I do think that that is exactly what it is, a good start. So there's a lot more to be gained, but we can build on this session with that.
Senator, there's already a lot of discussion regarding issues that weren't dealt with this year that will be on the legislature's plate for the 2014 session. What do you think you're going to be working on during the interim as we move through the summer and start to get ready for 2014?
Well, one that a lot of folks are talking about already is Medicaid expansion, and so we'll see exactly where that goes, but separate from Medicaid expansion in and of itself, or what are the implications to the state and local subdivisions of government and their budgets and the things that they have to currently cover, like the catastrophic care fund for and indigent expenses, medical expenses for ER visits with folks that don't have coverage and such. And how does that translate into savings, one, with the state, and two, with the counties? And I want to work on, in the interim, on the other half of the formula from the tax policy. At the state, we're fortunate, in my opinion, to have a revenue-driven system where we then go in and set the budget after we calculate revenue projections. The local subdivisions, the counties and cities, of course, they deal with a budget-driven system. And that can be rather tough because when the revenues don't necessarily come in the same as they did the year before, they have to shift them around. And I'm very sensitive to shifts in tax burden as opposed to complete overall tax policy changes. And so one of the things I want to work on are how are those budget-driven systems calculated, and how do you pull out the integrated tax policy like the personal property tax for business so that you don't have shifts and you can have a county or city, a local subdivision of government truly justify their expenses and have it a little bit more like a revenue-driven system. I think that that's very important. That's half of the equation as we move ahead and try to develop a more tax-friendly policy in Idaho for businesses.
Thank you, Senator. We really appreciate that. And thank you for joining us on Policy Connections. Please tune into our next episode where Superintendent of Public Education Tom Luna will join